Joining me today is someone who you may know as a lead singer, songwriter, and pianist for bands like Something Corporate and Jack's Mannequin. Or maybe you're more familiar with the music from his most recent solo project, Andrew McMahon and the Wilderness. For me, his music defines my pivotal era of teenage nostalgia evolving into young adulthood. And now the details of his own journey from child prodigy to indie superstar are beautifully woven into a story with a love letter to three pivotal pianos at its core. Andrew McMahon, welcome to the middle.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ashley.
Of course. So congratulations. This book, not surprisingly, is written like you write your music, which is straight up poetically. So did you enjoy this process and how was it different from songwriting?
Well, I mean, it's such a deep dive. It really took me every bit of a year to get from sort of the point of inception to what you're seeing there. And yeah, I mean, it's like writing, it's like a long form of writing a song for sure. It was challenging. Obviously, I took it very seriously, the fact that I was given, the right to publish a book and have a legitimate publisher, and having never written a book before, like I wanted to do it justice, and I wanted to earn the title of author rather than just sort of be granted it because of what I do for a living. So no, it was hard. I think the difference for me, obviously, song is a 3.5 minute journey into whatever the subject is. For me, this was much more about some version of therapy and closing up loose ends on my life, and finding, I think, some forgiveness and some peace for things that I didn't do that much that work to sort of correct in my early years. And it was a journey for sure.
And that's my next question. So were you surprised at all by the level of exposure that came with writing your own memoir compared to a song, which can be interpreted or at least a bit ambiguous in its meaning?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this format, obviously, I'm really putting myself out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sort of personal journey and struggle and failures and successes, things that I've kind of scratched the surface of and have talked about in shows and in press and things like that, but have never really, I think, done the work of shining the full spotlight on them. So it's scary. I think having that much of myself out in the world is something I'm not sure that I'm ready for. But I think what it did for me personally, and it really, there was a lot of healing that went on in the process of doing this, and a lot of understanding of myself that I got from kind of tying in a linear way this thread of my life, and saying like, oh, maybe it's because I went through this over here that I do this now later in life, and so I think it helped connect a lot of dots for me. But yeah, it's scary to know that people will read it.
Was there anything that you or Kelly hesitated including?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure there are. I mean, this is by no means, I think, like a tell-all. I think there were, I think there are still parts of our lives that are private and personal, and things that I chose not to dig into all the way. I think I picked the themes and the stories that are told in this book because they do a good job of illustrating my life and how I got to the music that I make, and why I do it, and certainly some of the mistakes I've made along the way, and how I've navigated those, and I'm still in many ways navigating them. But yeah, I mean, she was always the second reader on this book for sure, and and that was challenging at times for us. There were things about my life that she didn't even know, and I think there were moments where she was kind of jaw on the floor, like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize this was going on. And it was but it was good for us, and she's an academic, so it helps to have somebody in the house who's more well read than I am to lean on.
It's very nice. An in-house editor. I love that.
Yeah, totally.
So as in life, there are so many moments when I was reading this book that I couldn't help but think, I wonder what would have happened if he had done this. Like if you had gone to the performing arts boarding school, or,
Mhm.
these different paths that we take, and this is probably my own, like, because I always am struggling like with what would have happened if I had done this, where would I be? So do
Yeah.
you ever think about that, like the what ifs, or do you truly believe that everything happens for a reason and kind of like leads you to where you're supposed to be?
It's funny, like the sort of sliding doors conversation about life has always fascinated me. And I think, um, if I'm being honest, when I got sick, I kind of up to that point, and even when I was in the hospital, when I was diagnosed
Mhm.
with leukemia, I think for me, I had felt like everything was intentional somehow. Whatever this sort of stumbling through life is, I had found my way to to um, to my music, to a successful career, all these things, and so I think a lot of my early years and some of the harder things I just chalked up to this was meant to be. Um, but certainly when I got sick, I think I really got almost obsessed with that idea. Well, what if I hadn't? Like, where would I be now? And in a lot of ways, I feel like getting into like therapy and even writing this book was a way to make peace with some of those decisions or things that have happened to me, to say, whatever it is, this is the road you're on, and try and live it, and live your best life and be as present in that moment. But yes, I have had those. I've definitely had those moments where I've been um, almost obsessive about choices I've made and where I would have gone if I had gone the other direction.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about. And I mean, it could lead you down this rabbit hole, but no,
Totally.
it's yeah. You talk a little bit about the moment that you got to see your friends and label mates Newfound Glory get famous, but I noticed you didn't really go into depth about what it was like for something corporate. So was there a specific moment in time where you guys were like, oh my God, we're famous, like we did it? Or does it kind of happen and you don't even realize it's happening?
You know, it's so funny to hear you say it like that, because I never even thought of it like that. It was all it was all moving so quickly. And I think in a way there were still in our minds, and this is a mistake I've made throughout my career and try not to anymore. You're always reaching for the next thing, especially when you're young and you're like, I was 18 when I got signed, and so yeah, I saw my friends in these other bands like have hits on the radio and blow up and playing arenas and things, and something corporate never really got quite to that moment. So I think we were always sort of reaching for that moment, and in a way, and I do reflect on this, I think towards the end of the book, if I had the wherewithal to take a moment and breathe and look around and say, oh no, look at this has happened. It's not just something that's happening. This has happened. But I was too young then to really even notice it. And I regret that in a way, but I've been lucky to have these sort of two more careers since that, especially when Cecilia became a success, and those things kind of came my way in the third iteration. I really made a point to breathe and be with my bandmates and look around. And I'm fortunate that I've been able to do this a few times and get there enough to be present for it.
And I wonder if that's just something that comes with living and age and experience, just that, the knowledge that everything is so quickly moving and, you have to just be present. And again, back to my own, like that's, I think everybody's internal struggle, especially now with everything, all of the social media and everything, we're always just trying to be here, but it's
Yeah.
interesting.
Totally.
If this book were adapted into a biopic film, who would you cast to play yourself and who would you cast to play Kelly?
You're so funny. I should actually start formulating an answer to this question, because you're the second person that's asked me
Oh,
this like a couple of days, and I'm like, I don't know. The thought of that is so terrifying to me.
really?
Totally. Are you kidding? Like, it's so funny. I'm so fortunate to do what I do, but like the trappings of it scare me more than you could imagine. And even like I've had people like, well, what if this gets optioned as a movie? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to know. Like, I mean, obviously it'd be amazing, but I have no idea. Maybe you could suggest a couple of people for me, and then I'll have a better answer for the next one.
Oh my gosh. See, I don't even know. Okay, what about Kelly? It's easier to think about someone who's not yourself.
Oh my gosh, I have no idea. I'm like, I will botch this so bad. I mean, all of my analogs for Kelly or for me would be actors and actresses that are much older than we are because that's what we grew up with. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, we always joked when we were kids that Kelly and Diane Lane looked a lot alike, but this would have to be the fast forwarded version of our lives when we're much older.
Right.
So
Yeah, I feel,
yeah.
and I don't even know, like you'd have to look at like the Riverdale cast or like, you know what I mean? Like people that I
Those
can't
we
even
don't even watch. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
I love it. No, I could totally see this being adapted though. Like, so I think you might have to start like getting okay with it.
Well, I think a part of writing the book in the same way that I chose to do like a scoring gig in 2019 for Netflix. It was like to stretch out and to explore other wings of my creativity and stay fresh so that when I come back to music, that music is fresh, has been big. So certainly if this leads into other weird roads or whatever, I will follow it, however it plays out
I
for
love
sure.
it. Tell me a little bit about Camp Wilderness and the Dear Jack Foundation.
Well, so Camp Wilderness was an outcropping of this idea of, I mean, I'll be the first to admit the social media thing. I mean, even when I was 18 and we were, in the beginning of I think the digital world really expanding and our universe is ending up online. I ran the other direction from that even back then, and I'm really interested in like being in the world.
Yeah.
And so when I get caught in my phone, I end up feeling guilty. So uh I'd had enough experiences on social media that I felt like were, I don't know, a little toxic or a little intense. And I was like, well, what if we, created something that was more geared towards our diehard fans, and a model that like I could, I don't know, feel a little bit insulated, I guess, as weird as it is to say, but someplace where like really the topic of the day is a little more focused. And so we built this little world where, I was actually just curating a bunch of old demos that I found and sending stuff like, and so it's a place where I share things with like diehard fans that I feel a little more comfortable sharing things rather than like broadcasting like old voice memos of me with my nose like this when I'm a kid. Like these guys will get it. I don't know if the world will get it. So it's kind of a little, so it's a little club of fans and myself and friends that has been super rewarding. And yeah, I've been enjoying being a camper or a camp counselor in my own little
Counselor.
my own little online digital camp. And then Dear Jack, yeah, it's an amazing organization. I can't believe what it's turned into in the last 12, 13, 14 years, I guess probably now at this point. But we advocate for and build programs for adolescents and young adults who are either facing a cancer diagnosis or have survived one. So we have like a wish granting program where we really ride side by side with the patient, their family and friends, to help them fulfill goals and wishes and things that they're looking to check off their personal lists while they travel through a really difficult time. And bring a little light to their world while they're in it. Our other big program is called Breathe Now, and it's really inspired by Kelly, honestly, my wife who walked through cancer with me and all of its brutal aftermath. And we realized that there really wasn't anything there for young adults and their spouses or partners. Partners are so overlooked in this process. When you go through a cancer diagnosis and treatments, it's your spouse, your partner, your parents, whoever, your advocates. They go through it with you. They have that sickness with you, but few people check in on them. It's always about the patient,
Of course.
and that comes with its own set of baggage. And our goal was to destigmatize that baggage and bring young couples into a space where they can talk about what they went through, where the advocates can be seen, oftentimes for the first time. We do yoga, breath work, psychosocial breakout sessions, and that's been, for me, one of the most rewarding programs that I've been a part of with the foundation since we started it.
Thank you for all of the good that you're putting out there. I think it's also important. The memoir is so good. It comes out on October 26th. And unlike most book tours, yours is set to music. So there are still tickets available for the Three Pianos tour. How does this tour feel compared to others?
So it's going to be, I think it's going to be magical, but it's like anything that I do, I'm always like probably overly ambitious because I've done it for so long that I don't just want to put a show on and call it a day or just go play the songs. We obviously, because of COVID and everything, we're traveling with a smaller footprint because we want to make sure that it's like that we're airtight, quarantined as safe as possible, moving from one city to the next. So this show is going to have Mikey, my bass player, Morgan, my violinist. We're sort of this three-piece. It's really interesting. Mikey's like programming drums and playing synths. He's like, I think he plays bass on one song and he's my bass player. And it's a lot of three-part harmonies, but we went through and I just went through the book and pulled out the songs that I think are some of them that are called out in the book, but also songs that I think really represent the journey that I've been on in my life. So that I could dig into some of those stories. And then sort of elevate them with the songs and give people context for where I was at that point in my life. So it's really going to be built almost like a theater piece. I'm actually using two theater directors to direct the show. We have this really elaborate infinity mirror setup around the pianos. So I only have one piano, but it's going to be mirrored, so you'll see three. And video walls behind Mikey and Morgan, where we'll sort of have some nostalgic content and things like that. I think it's going to be stunning, but it's a lot. I'm biting off a lot, so we're about to get really deep into it.
I am okay. I'm definitely coming because I've been in that kind of place where I'm sure a lot of people are, where it's like, do we go to a concert? Do we not? And I just want you to know. So my husband was like, "Oh, why don't we get Elton John tickets?" And I'm like, I don't know that I'm ready to go to Madison Square Garden, but I'm ready to go to the Stone Pony to see Andrew McMahon. So you beat Elton John.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I get it. It's like it's such a personal decision whether or not to get in a room. I went to Lollapalooza this year, and they did what we're going to be doing, and what every venue is basically going to be doing, which is, you either have to have a negative test within a couple of days or proof of vaccination. So like, I think just by doing that, we don't want to be controversial. That's why I think, but I do think we want to lower the risk to enter that room so that people can relax enough to enjoy the show. And then I just say, like, if you're nervous, like, wear a mask. It's like you'll be double. Yeah, well, there's that. But like, wear a mask. Do the thing, get the test, wear the mask, do it all, so that you can just rock out with us. And I get it. I'm nervous too, but I think between those protocols, and if people are anxious and want to wear a mask, I think that that's what I did at the indoor shows at Lollapalooza, and it was like, I came home totally healthy and feeling good, and so I think there's a lot we can do to take care of ourselves, and I think it's time.
It's time. And I didn't mean to make it about COVID. Sorry, I just was
no, but
but
it's present. It's on all of our minds. We're especially getting into a large room, and so I only say it now because it's on my mind, so don't worry about it. But I'm thinking it's going to be a really beautiful night.
Yeah, people are ready. We're ready to be in the same room with the music. Now, do Kelly and Cecilia tour with you?
So, I mean, Cecilia was effectively raised on a tour bus. So for our first 3.5 years, they went everywhere with me, which was, such a magical time. I mean, it's so weird. Like, what a weird experience to raise your baby, flying all over the world and whatever. But especially as we were chasing the single that was, her name. But after she started preschool, then we kind of started scaling back. So now we keep a schedule. We try not to go more than 2 weeks without seeing each other, and that either means me flying home to them or them flying out to me. So they'll be out with me 3 or 4 times throughout the couple months. And we pick cities where I got days off and things like that. And it'll be good, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be a tough tour since it's been so long since I've really been away from them for that long. But we're making plans, and we'll have a vacation afterwards and stuff like that. So.
Nice. Yeah. Well, please don't stop. I've been trying to like keep my fangirl at bay this whole conversation because I am such a fan, but I love everything that you do. I love all of your music. I'm so happy for you in this book. And I also appreciate the fact that you don't call out all the songs. Like you tell stories about songs and like where the inspiration came from. But as a fan, you kind of have, I'm like, oh, I know what he's talking about. So true fans will absolutely love this, reading this book and every sense of it. So thank you. And it was so lovely meeting you.
It's great to meet you too. Thanks for the conversation.